It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Today is September 17th. Today is September 17th, and I want to welcome you to episode 44 of Coffee and Cloud Native. Do y'all remember when Geraldo would be like, we'll be back in 2 and 2? I'm not nearly as cool as Geraldo, but I was on the Geraldo show one time. That's a story for another time. Not the crazy, stupid Jerry Springer talk show, but one of his later shows. Anyway, hi, my name is Adrian Goins. Every night, I and my army of bots scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and every day I sit here and I talk to you, and I share the bits that I find interesting. This is a curated list of content. Everything is a curated list of content, right? I think everybody's always going to say that. But for real, I go through about 200 submissions every single night after dinner, and I select just a handful of them for the next day's show. These are the tools and the products and the things that I myself would use, could use, do use, would like to use, don't have time to use, but I want to share them with you so that hopefully together, collectively, we can all use them. Or not. Anyway, if you're watching, now or in the future, please click the thumbs up button on the video so that the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. Subscribe to the channel. In fact, thank you to everybody who subscribed yesterday. When I was doing the show yesterday morning, we were at 1,997 subscribers. We crossed 2K during the show, and this morning I'm at like 2021 or something. So, wow. Thank you so much. If you are watching, you should come over to the YouTube chat, unless you're already there, in which case, hey, cool, nice to see you in the chat. Because that's where lots of stuff scrolls by, and WifeBot is here, and Nightbot is here, and I see we have a bunch of people here this morning. Wow. Good morning, everybody. Alexander, WifeBot, Ian, Madam Lori. I love seeing everybody talking in the chat. Yesterday when I was going on my VMware rant, I could just see it in the peripheral vision, and it was like scroll, 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 scroll. I'm sorry that I don't get to interact as much with the chat as I would like to, but I do have WifeBot who tells me when there's something important that I do need to respond to. So if you need to get my attention, just talk to WifeBot about it. So I got Mose, Ian, Marcel, Cindy. Hi, Cindy. Duck Nebuchadnezzar. What a great name. Hey, Trix. All right. Everybody rolling in. Good morning, Peter. Cindy just discovered WifeBot. Cindy's from my wife's coloring community. All right, we got a bunch of stuff to go through today, so let's get started doing that, right? First up, this is All Things Open, which is, as you can see on the screen, a polyglot technology conference focusing on the tools, processes, and people making open source possible. Right? Who wouldn't want to go to that? So Rancher is actually one of the sponsors of All Things Open. And our sponsorship includes the opportunity to sponsor another organization and to give them a virtual booth at the conference. Now, this other organization needs to be a nonprofit or a smaller organization who maybe doesn't have, like, who wouldn't otherwise be able to come to the event. I don't know who that would be, which is why I'm asking you guys. I don't know that they even necessarily have to be in IT, but since it's a conference about open source stuff, it seems like it should at least be an organization who fits in the conference. If you have any ideas about who we might be able to sponsor, please either let me know in the chat, and WifeBot will pick it up, or let me know in the comments, or hit me up on Twitter, or hit me up on the Rancher user Slack. I don't know when we have to submit this, probably today or tomorrow. So if you have any ideas of an organization, nonprofit or smaller organization doing something with IT and open source that might like a free virtual booth at this event, please let me know. Next, we have this, which I talked about before in the show. This is coming up on October 21st. It's being hosted by Rancher, but it's not our event. We have lots of other organizations that are coming and giving talks, and the CFP for talks is open until Friday. That's tomorrow. They extended it. It actually was supposed to close, I think, last Friday, and they extended it to give some people an opportunity to people were thinking about talks but hadn't submitted them yet. We want to make sure we get the largest number of talks submitted so that we can pick and choose the best ones. if you, as an individual or as an organization, well, first of all, if you as an individual would like to come to this, go register because it's free. And Edge is the next battleground for Kubernetes. There are lots of really cool things happening with Edge stories. I'm going to take these off. I can't see through them anyway. There are lots of really cool things happening with Edge stories. So if you as an individual or an organization have a story about a product or a project you're building for Kubernetes on the edge, or challenges that you overcame with doing stuff on the edge, or deployments, or anything at all related to moving all of that functionality out closer to the end user, manufacturing, storeroom floor, retail shops, please submit a CFP. It can be anything at all related to the edge. This is edgeconference.io, and you can register. You can submit a talk. CFP open until Friday. Hope to see you there. And of course, we need to remind you that tomorrow is Giveaway Friday. Giveaway Friday and the last show before I go on vacation for 2 weeks. Vacation. Giveaway Friday. Because we crossed 2,000, I will be giving away 1 copy of the Kubernetes Mastery course from Brett Fisher, for sure. Nightbot will be helping me with that. And just like the previous 2 weeks that we did this, if we get 50 people watching the show, somebody who is in the chat will also win a copy of this. So we've got 2 opportunities to win tomorrow. Don't miss it. Hopefully you saw the show earlier in the week. I see people on Twitter now, people who watch the show, and they're posting their own stuff. They're being like, "Don't miss it." It's pretty funny. Don't miss it. Don't you dare. And now we get to the content. Killer Shell reached out to me yesterday. We had them on the show last week. So we had Killer Shell on the show. They have a killer solution for simulating the CKA and the CKAD exams in a real-world timed environment. But what they reached out to me about yesterday is that they actually have, their service is a paid service, but they have CKA and CKAD challenges that you can just do yourself. You can run the environment for these in Vagrant or in any other Linux environment, and these are the entry point articles. So this one's for the CKA, this one's for the CKAD. Each one links to the other, so it's easy to figure it out. And so it's like, here's a challenge, creating a pod. And if we open that, the idea is to do it as close to the exam environment as possible. So do this, do this, do this, and then don't look at the solution. Your solution might be different, but as long as the end result is the same, then that counts. And they have a bunch of different challenges that correspond to each of the things. In each of these, they also have this other link here, how to be fast with kubectl 1.18 or greater, which even if you're not using their challenges, is a good article in all of the fastest ways. Now updated for 1.19, that's cool. All of the fastest ways to do things and generate YAML using kubectl. This is a big part of the exams, being able to quickly generate the boilerplate YAML that you need, or modify existing YAML to apply things to the cluster. If you can do that quickly, the seconds that you save on every single command will stack up and give you time to finish the exam in the end. So this is just a freebie that they threw in for you. Oh, I hear WifeBot making a noise. People are saying that Katakoda has a CKAD simulator too. That's from Michael and from Tej. Okay. Maybe. I don't know. Katakoda didn't reach out to me yesterday and share what they have on their environments. I'll look into that. I really liked what Killer Shell had, though, for the simulated environment. So anyway, here's some free stuff. I'll make a note to go and look at... Where's my notepad? I'll make a note to go and look at what Katakoda has for a simulator for the exams. Katakoda... So, there you go. See? Wrote it down. Also, yesterday. I love when people reach back out to me and give me more information for something that I had on the show or follow up with stuff. So yesterday, well, actually not yesterday, we had OAuth 2 proxy on the show. And let's see, I don't actually have a list of when we had that, but we had OAuth 2 proxy on the show. And I asked if there was anything similar for Traefik. Well, apparently there is a pull request for supporting Traefik forwardAuth in OAuth 2 proxy. This was opened a little more than a week ago. They're working on getting it into OAuth 2 proxy. So if you are using Traefik, this is coming. And additionally, we have this. Hang on one second here. All right, sorry. So additionally, we have this. So Manuel reached out to me, and when we had OAuth 2 proxy for nginx in, I was talking about the number of annotations and the complexity of the annotations that you actually need, and I was just making a joke about wow, like these are not simple at all. And Manuel reached out to me and said that actually there are fewer than you need. We originally had this on in episode 38. And this, if you see, for doing integrations with external OAuth providers, this is much, much, much friendlier. This is in the existing nginx ingress controller for Kubernetes. So if you wish to do stuff with external OAuth, I'll have this linked in the show notes as well. This, pay attention, boys and girls. There is a new nasty CVE out. I was going to put this on the show yesterday, but all that anybody had was this, which is basically the detailed report of when the vulnerability was disclosed. Nobody had mitigation solutions for it. Well, Sysdig does now as well. This CVE is ugly. It's at least as bad as the run C CVE from whenever that was, a few months ago, a year ago, I don't know. It was bad. This, at the bare minimum, it allows for container escape. It might allow for root compromise. It compromises the security and privacy of data. It requires no privileges to execute. It's not like you're escaping out of a privileged pod. It's an overflow in the ability for a process to sculpt raw packets. And it's ugly. So first things first, patch your OS. If you can't implement downtime to patch all of your clusters, then you want to disable cap-net raw, the raw net capability. Nothing needs that unless you're running something that actually can do packet sculpting. I don't know why you're running anything like that inside of your Kubernetes cluster. And if you are, disable it for everything else and lock that other thing down. Now, Falco can detect and stop this. And this article gives instructions on how to configure Falco to do that. And then it continues with information on, well, first of all, it points out that the rule in Falco that can detect this has actually been in Falco since 2019. So even though they didn't know that this CVE existed, detecting that a packet socket was created in the container was already present. So if you already have Falco deployed, boom, just activate this and you're good to go. It continues with information on how to detect it with Sysdig Secure. So Sysdig Secure can detect it and stop it, but it can also identify vulnerable operating systems in your environment. By identifying, by identifying vulnerable machines, you can also look at the workloads that are on those machines, and you can do mitigation in a more tactical form until you're able to go through and update the systems. Or you can identify the highest class of vulnerability and know which you need to update first. As far as dropping CapNet raw, you can do this with a pod security policy, but there are risks to making that change in a running environment. I don't have PSPs in any of my environments. I looked at just rolling out a PSP, and I was like, ooh, wow, okay, so it's not just like I can roll out a unrestricted PSP and like activate just a single thing. I need to make sure that the pod security policy is not going to disable anything that the operational environment is actually using. So at 10:30 last night, right before going to bed, I decided that that was not the right time to do this. Sysdig Secure has another tool called the Pod Security Policy Advisor. This will simulate the change of a pod security policy on an environment and will identify what workloads are doing and what actually will be affected. Thank you, Sysdig. I'm glad to see that. Like, I wanted to put something on the show yesterday, but I don't want to just come on the show and be like, the house is on fire. I want to come on the show and say the house is on fire or potentially vulnerable to fire, and here's how you can protect yourself from burning to the ground. But yeah, really what you need to do is patch your stuff. You need to patch it quick. Every single operating system, this is an 8.5 on the severity scale, and every single operating system vendor has a patch out for it. So patch your stuff. And how would we say this, Trix? This isn't really protect your port. What would this be? Protect your packets? I don't know. I'm sure Trix will come up with something. What do we have here? We have coffee that's just now getting cool enough that I can drink it. Volterra was on the show with their crazy infrastructure that provides protection for Kubernetes environments and distributed applications, and their extremely generous free tier that pretty much any of us can use if we have one or two small clusters. This article talks about how they built an internal system because they were asked to augment their existing security tools and software dev test practices for PCI DSS and SOC 2 compliance. Sounds serious, right? I love that they first tried to buy a solution and basically determined that it sucked. They don't say who it's from, but they say that they spent 3 months deploying and testing an industry-leading commercial product. It would pick incorrect dependencies. It would not exit gracefully. It had problems with containers that were built from scratch versus those with some known base image. This is a problem with closed source solutions. They do a fixed set of things, and if you're outside of that bucket, well, you know where you can go. Volterra, however, did not compromise and instead said, you know what, let's just build something from scratch. So they looked at first what they needed to scan, when do they need to scan it, and then they looked at tools that would satisfy those requirements. So a list of demands and then a list of things. This is actually kind of how I ended up in Chile. Sort of random story. I made a list of countries I would be willing to live in and a list of things I wanted in a country, and then I drew lines, and Chile had the most lines. They ended up picking Traefik. Traefik is an open source solution from Aqua. Sorry, Sysdig. So they ended up picking Traefik, and they talk about why they picked it and the one limitation that it had that they had to work around. And then they get into some really cool stuff about how they used Amazon SQS to get the data into Elasticsearch so that they could visualize it with Kibana. And then they went one step further and they actually wrapped Traefik in something that enabled their developers to submit pull requests to override specific checks. So let me take a step back. First, they made their CI system fail if Traefik found a vulnerability. So say you're trying to push your stuff out, there's a vulnerability, no go. But if the vulnerability was something that actually the application wasn't vulnerable for, or they'd fixed it in a different way, or it was one of those things where it's like, host responds to ping, danger, 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 then the developer could submit a pull request asking that be excluded from the checks. That would be reviewed by an external security person and then merged, and then things can go. So they built a process by which people can continue to do their jobs. Best thing of all, they open sourced it. Down here at the bottom, there you go. If you would like to check it out and use it for yourself, there it is. Thanks, Volterra. Next up, my mom gets a service mesh. Oh, no, sorry, not my mom. Nginx. Nginx gets a service mesh. I'm telling you, pretty soon, my mom's going to come out with a service mesh. She's going to be like, oh, this is Adrian's mom's service mesh. My mom doesn't sound like that. But when you're doing your mom's voice, right, you got to make it sound like she's like Betty Crocker from the 50s or something. I don't know. This is mostly not news. I don't... Okay, so this raised a thing inside myself where I was like, wow, am I a hypocrite? I talk about HA proxy, and I've openly talked with people from HA proxy about how they have all of this domain knowledge, domain-specific knowledge around load balancing that seems like that would carry over well into service mesh. I mean, look at Traefik and mesh, right? Beautiful. And Nginx didn't have anything. And I like HA proxy. I want HA proxy to stay relevant, but the truth of the matter is that if you just have a solution that does load balancing, well, there's all sorts of other stuff in the marketplace that does more than that, especially in Kubernetes, so you kind of need to have a service mesh. But then I saw Nginx come out with a service mesh, and I'm like, that's the dumbest thing ever. Why does Nginx need a service? And I realized that they need it for all of the same reasons. But the most interesting thing about this article is this quote from the chief marketing officer of Nginx. So I don't know how technical he is, but I really liked his quote where he said, most organizations will not need a service mesh unless they are looking to integrate more than 1,000 microservices. If an organization only has hundreds of microservices, then an ingress controller should suffice, and anything involving less than 100 microservices can be handled by proxy software. If you remember, I was looking at Kuma a few days ago, and I was like, oh, it's so pretty. I really want to use it. And I had no use case for it. Worse, things like this. We all love the things that are shiny and pretty and, oh, they're so fun, and we want to look at them and poke them and play with them. And then they just become another thing that we have to support. And pretty soon we've got all of these shiny, pretty things that you have to support, and it doesn't take long for them to not become shiny and pretty anymore and just become a burden on you. So consider that. Consider the actual cost of supporting the shiny pretty, and maybe just go play with it in a lab and be like, oh yeah, that's cool. At least now I know what it does, and if in the future I need it, I know what options are available to me. So Nginx is coming out with a service mesh. I think that's probably the right move, because unless they can get into the API gateway service mesh game, they're just going to get cycled out for something else. Their service mesh solution does integrate with all of their commercial products, or will integrate with all of their commercial products, and I'm not here to talk about that. Good job, Nginx. Way to stay relevant. Whoa, good job, Nginx. Way to stay relevant. And HA proxy, come on, guys. Get it together. Which leads us to this. There is a battle going on between service mesh versus API gateway. Mortal Kombat! Shipwreck, are you in the chat? You are in the chat. Okay, everybody say hi to Jason. Oh, I'm sorry. Jason. Shit. Jason's last name is Polish, and I lived in Poland, and I really take great pride in being able to pronounce Polish last names correctly. But for some reason, I just have a really hard time with him, which is why everywhere he just goes by Shipwreck. Shipwreck. There you go. Jason Shipwreck is in the chat. Say hi to him. He will be having a masterclass next week, hosted by Rancher, asking, has service mesh taken over the API gateway? If you are interested in service mesh, if you're interested in the differences between service mesh and API gateway, if you want to understand that service mesh is really just a concept, if you want to understand the Venn diagram between the two of them and how much overlap there actually is, then this is where you need to go. This is free. I'll have a link for it in the show notes and all those other places afterwards. Come check this out. Don't miss it. How many of you were here when I went on a rant a few weeks ago about... Oh, that's interesting. Hang on a second. David Michael says that Istio auto-injection requires capnet raw. Well, that sucks. Huh. I'd like to see how Istio is going to respond to that, because lots of people are going to go disable capnet raw. Dan, if you're watching the show, can you talk to your peeps about how disabling capnet raw might affect deployments with Istio, and let me know so we can try and get that on the show tomorrow? Because that's going to screw up a lot of stuff. Thanks, David. Okay. Oh, David says Jason said that. Wifebot, you're fired. Jason said that. Shipwreck. Thank you. Okay, there's a whole thing going on in the chat about CNI fixing stuff. Okay, I'm gonna go back and read the chat afterwards, and we'll come out with that. All right, where am I? Oh, I'm running out of time. That's awesome. Nobody expected that. Right, so I went on a rant about operators. I'm not gonna go on a rant today. No rant. Today is rant-free Thursday. Wednesday is rant day. Operators, okay, operators are great, but I showed an article that said that using an operator to deploy a single thing actually is just a bad use of the operator pattern, that operators are best when you need to deploy lots of different copies of the same thing. You need the ability to manage them and update them and do all sorts of other stuff. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we had Nexus on the show. Nexus is the container registry, and I use it myself. As a pull-through cache. So it's not just, it's an artifact repository. So Nexus, good. Operator, maybe good. First off, don't deploy your caching registry inside the Kubernetes cluster that needs to use the caching registry. Ask me how I know this. I did it when I had GitLab. GitLab was my container registry, and I was like, oh, this is wonderful. And then there was this whole race condition between the things needing to pull containers. GitLab wasn't running. GitLab takes like 99 years to start. So anyway, we don't do that anymore. But when I was prepping to talk about Nexus the other night, I looked at how I run it. I run it on a separate virtual machine, and I just run the Docker container. And I was like, you know, I could make this a single node K3s cluster. I could add that to Rancher, and then at least I could manage it from, because I had to go upgrade it because it was crufty and old, and I didn't want to show you that I was running the crufty old version of Nexus, because I don't do that. I don't run crufty old software. All of my stuff is the latest possible. No, anyway. So I looked at deploying K3s, putting Nexus into that, and I thought, okay, that's cool. I think that this actually, as an operator, is good in that model, primarily because it does automatic updates. And that is a good use of the operator pattern. So what I'm going to do with this is I will take down my Docker image. I'm going to turn that node into a single node K3s node. I will redeploy Nexus, and hopefully I don't have to delete my entire cache, but I probably will. So I'm going to redeploy Nexus, and I will redeploy it with this operator so that I don't have to worry about running crufty old software. This is the Nexus operator, and I'm going to give this a thumbs up. I have tool of the day and one more thing. I'm just going to do it. All right, we got more Sysdig here. I'm not going to do it. This will be good for tomorrow, and that's one less thing that I'll have to look up tonight. We'll talk about this tomorrow. That leads us to the tool of the day. Tool of the day today is kube-downscaler. There was an article that came up about using this for time of day and day of week automation. And basically what kube-downscaler does is it spins workloads up and down according to a schedule. You can use it, for example, for spinning dev clusters down or any production environment components that aren't needed 24/7. If you combine that with cluster autoscaler, then when you scale down your workloads, those nodes in your cluster become, well, less utilized, and the cluster autoscaler will scale it down. And if you're running in a cloud environment, this saves you money. We've had env0, it's env0 on the show before. They can also do that using Terraform. But if you're not using Terraform, you can do it with this. It operates based on either downscale periods or downscale times when it will actually take action on something, and it can scale down as well as scale back up. It works based on time zone, including, or time range, including time zone. So you don't have to try and do time zone math in your head. You can just say, oh yeah, in Berlin time or whatever, I want to scale this stuff down. And there was something else. All right, so there's a caveat. If you are using horizontal pod autoscaler, you can't scale down to 0. You have to scale down to 1. Otherwise, you end up in a fight where it scales to 0 and HPA scales it back up to 1. Looks easy to deploy. Looks like a great tool for certainly scaling down environments at night and on the weekend when you don't need them. And when I look at tool candidates for tool of the day, because I like to give a shout out to the person who introduced me to it over Twitter when I do all of the show note postings at the end, I also like to look at who is this person. And I don't look at it from the criteria of, oh, you're not a real person, or you don't work for a real company, so I'm not going to tweet your stuff. But I'd like to know where these people are. I like to see who are the people that create these tools. And in doing that research, certain things, certain places, and certain people keep coming up. The article talks about how they almost didn't use this, but because it has, so it still required some manual work configuration during breaks and holidays. Probably you could automate that. That was the only con that they had against it. And they compared it to Jenkins, Kubernetes cron jobs, and CRDs inside of Kubernetes, and they finally decided to go with this. It's a little small. There we go. They finally decided to go with this. So when I was doing the research, I went back and I was like, okay, who wrote this? So this is in H. Jacobs, and who is Henning Jacobs? Henning Jacobs is senior principal at none other than Zalando. Hi, Zalando. Welcome to the show again. Nice to see you doing so many things, so many places. Kube janitor. Oh. Okay. We're going to have to look at some more stuff of what Mr. Jacobs has going on and see if we can get more of those things into Tool of the Day. All right. Kiddos. That's it. That's all we've got for today. If you liked what you saw today, give the video a thumbs up. It means a lot to me. It means even more to the tender YouTube algorithm. It's a very sensitive bot, and if it doesn't get the right thumbs up, it doesn't do what we need it to do. Subscribe to the channel. Come on. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am here every weekday to talk about Kubernetes, cloud native, nifty stuff, and there's always something to talk about. Remember that tomorrow is Giveaway Friday, where somebody in the chat is definitely going to win a copy of Brett Fisher's Kubernetes Mastery course, and somebody else in the chat might win a copy. Definitely, it's not going to be the same person. You can't win twice. You also can't win if you won before. But somebody else is going to win if we get 50 people watching the stream. So even if you don't hang out in the chat, help somebody there win by coming and watching the stream tomorrow. We've been able to do it the previous 2 weeks. Tomorrow, hat trick, 2 giveaways. Yeah. I will have all of the timestamps and notes and everything up in the video description in about an hour. That'll also be on the website. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll get a notification when that happens. Basically, nobody follows me on Twitter. I get like 1 new follower a day. So come follow me on Twitter too. Or just hit refresh and you'll see the notes appear. If you have something that you would like me to consider for the show, hit me up and let me know. My contact details are in the video description, or you can tweet with the CNCN hashtag and I will pick it up. If I mentioned a tool that you use, also, please tell me in the comments. I love hearing about your experience with these things. I'd love hearing whether they're good, they're bad, they're awesome, other things that you've found. There's so much out there. There's so much out there. Shipwreck showed me this site that I can't share with you because it's like secret sauce. man, like it's a rabbit hole of finding if somebody liked this, they also like that. And so I'm here to talk about all of that stuff, to share it with you, to hang out with you. And somebody's posting about Facebook. I don't have a Facebook account. No, not going to go there. Anyway, I'm here. There's always something to talk about. I'm super late. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for staying late. Thank you for watching. Just straight up, thank you. Have a great day. Keep learning, and I will see you in the next show.